So you want to learn how to do this. Maybe this is something you've been working on for a while and you just don't feel like you're making much progress lately. Or maybe every time you try to touch 5 balls, you end up feeling like somebody from an infomercial and you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. Either way, this is the place to be. I recently learned this myself, and that means I had a lot of long-term pros giving me different advice for things to practice, so I figured I'd compile the most helpful tips that I got into one video and just go over what worked for me. But before we start, I'm assuming you already know how to juggle 3 balls. If not, just Google it, I guess. I don't know, I never made a video on that. Also, I'm going to go through these as a progression, so if something doesn't seem useful, just skip ahead a little bit and the next thing probably will be. Especially the one at the end, because it's the reason I can do any of this now anyway, and it's something that no one even told me. But enough intro, let's just jump into... This is about as basic as it gets, but it's still helpful just to get a feel for what you're trying to do. So split the balls and just try to make 5 throws. Don't worry about catching them or anything, just focus on making consistent throws, and when you let the balls drop, you want to listen for the thumps. Ideally, the smacks are going to come in even intervals, so if you hear this, then your throw timing is off. You want it to sound much more like this, so that it sounds really consistent. It's a good cue for whether or not you're doing it right. Lastly, you want to make sure you're getting the balls into 2 separate piles on the floor. Your throws will need to cross more than they do with 3 balls, so the accuracy is important. Anyway, it's a helpful place to start, but it's not worth a ton of time, so let's keep moving. Next step up, we're going to do a little bit of juggling, just not with 5 balls yet. So take 3 balls, and you can either do this right from the start or while you're juggling, but just quickly flash all 3 up higher like you're doing a 5-ball throw. Again, this is mostly to give you a feel for what you're going to need to do eventually, so you want to focus on just keeping a good height for you. The higher you throw, the more time you'll have between throws, but the throws will also be less controlled, so find yourself your happy medium and get your throws there every time. Also, notice how with 3 ball, my arms will cross in front of me a little bit with each throw. With 5 ball, your arms really stay a lot wider, so you need to focus on making sure you throw over the mid-plane of your body more. This is the same idea as the last one, just with 1 more ball. Start with 2 in each hand and make throws to keep good pacing, and then when you get to where the 5th throw should be, just snap your fingers or something like that to keep the rhythm. I honestly think this is one of the least helpful tips that I got, because if you can do this at this point, you might as well just start working with 5. But I figured I'd mention it because it might be helpful to somebody out there. We're dropping down a ball again here, and we're going to do a bit of a weirder pattern. You want to just take 3 in one hand and snake the balls back and forth. This is a really good drill for dialing in on your throws and working on consistency, because you can very clearly see if each throw is following the exact same arc. It makes it really obvious to tell like this when it's not. It's also a pretty common problem to be less consistent with your non-dominant arm, and drilling this can really help you work on that. For me, I found it helpful to do this a bit as a warm-up before trying to actually juggle, and if I started to get sloppy while I was juggling, I'd do a few more of these to bring the control back into my throws. For the most part, this is how I would practice. Don't try to do too much too fast, just have a number of throws that you want to hit and go for it. I spent a really long time just training 6 throws because it would force me to throw one after catching it, but also stopping with 6 ends with 3 balls in my right hand so I wouldn't have to keep shifting balls around every time. As I progressed, I would say, okay, let's go for 7, and then 8, and I kept working my way up, but having that end point in mind kept me from panicking and getting sloppy too quickly. It also helps just not to push too far too fast. Overextending yourself too soon when you're trying to learn a new skill is a good way to burn yourself out and make it feel like you'll never get there. Take your time, know your limits, and just try to nudge that line, not shoot past it. So this was something that I thought was an interesting piece of advice. I had asked a friend for tips on learning to juggle 5 ball, and he basically just said don't learn enough to flash it once and then break into some other kind of 5 ball trick that's easier to do. And if your goal is just to show off to people, then that's not bad advice, because you can do that. It's not nearly as hard and it looks cool. But if you're actually trying to learn the skill, it's not super helpful. So I am going to cover one easier trick to learn real quick, but I'm not going to get into it too much because that should be its own video if I'm going to do that. So this one is kind of like a 3-ball cascade, but with 2 extra balls snuck in there. Your first throw is just one ball, and then every throw after that is two balls that split into either hand. If you're always splitting the balls, you end up with two in your hand by the time you need to make each throw. So if you can do this, and string it together with a flash of 5 ball, it does look pretty cool, but that's probably not really why you're here, so I'm moving on. Now this last one is the one that really helped everything click for me, and it's not even something that somebody told me. I just happened to figure this out while I was juggling bowling balls, and I was terrified of this thing that can happen where they collide with each other and then they just shoot off in random directions. Super dangerous, super scary, but that fear taught me how to more effectively aim around collisions. Each individual ball is an occupied space, and that's followed by an empty space. If we shift perspective to specifically look out for those holes, what you can see is that after this ball crosses the peak of its arc, it opens up a hole here, and that's where the next throw needs to go. This all sounds really obvious, but focusing on aiming for that hole pretty much entirely eliminated collisions from my juggling. And obviously this is a lot harder to see at full speed, especially while you're juggling, but I promise if you really focus on finding the opening and shooting that next ball right in there, you will improve. That's all I've got for you for now, so hopefully something in this video will help bump you over that hill to learning 5-ball. If you have any questions or anything, just drop a comment. One of the benefits of being a small channel is that I can actually reply to everyone. Anyway, if this helped you, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one, I guess. Maybe I'll do more tutorials, I don't know.